Poster on David Meltzer's thing again.
Hello, everybody, and good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're catching us at this time in your little corner of the world. Today, myself, Glenda Cruel, and my great buddy here and my sidekick partner and friend, Nicole Harvick, we're going to be talking about our own selves and reinvention and how we came to this and what we try to teach you. Nicole, you want to say hello to everybody out there?
I do. And I'm really excited about this conversation, Glenda, because I don't even remember exactly when we started, but it's real interesting because we both have different monikers on our name now because we have morphed, we have changed, we have, gone into something a little bit different than when we started. And that's okay. That's what happens. That's progress in life. So I think this is going to be a great conversation that we're going to have today.
Yeah, I love it too, because you know what people need to realize is one important factor as we're just beginning all of this is, when you're given a title, like if you're a doctor or a lawyer or a plumber, everybody thinks that that's who you are. But let's be really real about all of this. That's only a corner of your own world. That's not who you are. No matter it's how you might earn an income, but it's not who you are.
I totally agree with that. And I think we've been conditioned to think that way from the time we're children. If you're an A student or you're the athlete or you're the cheerleader, you're the science nerd. We've all got these little things that we think are us because someone has said that's who we are. And oftentimes that stops us from really going inside and discovering who we are and what we really want. Because a lot of times, kids are pushed into college and, well, my parent wanted me to do that. My mom or dad wanted me to do that. And so we're really not discovering us unless we go in search of ourselves.
And the one thing I would suggest to people, if this is hitting anything in you when we're talking about this, is go on to Google and just ask it to list out virtues, and if you start with certain things, like start looking in and seeing to identify with yourself. What are your core things that you relate to of who you are? Are you a strong, are you a type of person that learns verbally, or do you have to find ways of reading to find for things to come into you? Do you believe in being, like I'm still from the old fashioned days that I'm very much that if I give you my word, I'm honored by my word. I will go to the ends of the earth because I don't need to have a contract, although obviously I do because we're in a different world now. But start to learn about who you are. But so let's start a little bit back for everybody. And Nicole, can you share with us, how did you become a quantum energy healer? You obviously didn't start from this point in your life. As we just talked, you've changed since you and I have started Let's Get Real.
Oh, absolutely. And when I look back like 20 or 25 years, and if someone would have told me I was going to be reading Nicole Harvick, Quantum Energy Healer, I wouldn't have even known really what that meant. But as I started my journey of divorce and going through that pain of divorce and knowing that who I wasn't the true me. It just wasn't. And I knew that while I was in that situation, but I almost felt like I didn't know what to do, or I'd played that role so long that it almost felt, Well, you can't change. That's how everybody knows you. But guess who didn't know me? I didn't. It was like, who is this girl, having to play this role or go to this dinner or that dinner, or, I could just feel that really wasn't the real me. And when I went through divorce, which was obviously very devastating, it was hitting me so deep that I was starting to get sick. So for me, it was a knowing that if I didn't extract myself from this situation, I was going to get sick.
So is that how you got onto the healing side of things?
It is. I had been, I've always been someone who's very interested in spirituality as a young girl. Like I've always been an avid reader, but I can remember reading, there was her name was Jean Dixon, but she was like from the 60s and 70s.
Oh,
And
I've heard of her.
do you
Yes.
remember that name?
Yes, I do remember that name.
I used to read her books when I was like in elementary school or seventh grade. And people were like, what? I would do seances. I had a playhouse in my backyard when I was like in fourth and fifth grade, and I would do seances out there. I don't know how I knew what that was. Maybe because I watched Dark Shadows, but I'm really giving away my age now. But I've always had an interest. I had a grandmother that was very spiritual and very gifted in getting messages. So I've always just had that ability. But once you start working and you're married or you have kids, there's kind of that time in your life where you shut certain things out, whether you should or not. For me, I wish I hadn't, but I did. And I became what everybody perceived me to be. Lived in the right neighborhood, drove the right car, kids went to the right school, kids were dancers, kids were volleyball players. One was Miss Arizona, just everything that you think you're supposed to be. And it wasn't working. And it wasn't, I was living a lie. And it's so interesting because in talking to my friends, they'd come out to see me. And it was still me when I could get around the people like that I'd known for 15 or 20 years. But come to find out when they would stay at my house and my ex was there. Oh boy, when I finally separated, did I hear an earful. So that was very interesting. But you know what, Glenda, they held space for me through my ordeal. And I started learning. I was so sick, I knew that I needed help. So I thought, well, who better to count on than me? So I started learning healing modalities. I became a Reiki master. I studied cellular memory. I've got many hours in cellular memory. NLP, I studied that. Oh my gosh, I'm just trying to tapping, emotional freedom technique, tapping yourself, everything you could think of. And while I did everything and I meditated and I prayed, I still, when I was with him, I wasn't getting better. And it just, whatever was going on was not working. And that's when it hit me. It was on a trip to Hawaii, and I made an offering to the island, and I fed a stray, which my guides had told me to do. When I came back from that trip, the only word I saw, and I saw it every place, and I had never heard of this in my life, was Ho'oponopono. And that's an ancient forgiveness practice that is, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. And I thought, that's not going to work. That's free. I've seen counselors, I've gone to groups, psychologists, and retold my story. And I thought, there's no way this can work. And my guide said, just try it. Just try it. I'm like, okay, I've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I've got nothing to lose. I'm sick. I'm not doing well. I'm going to try it. So I just would kind of lay there at night and just repeat it over and over and over. And all of a sudden I started feeling better about it. And ironically enough, one of the classes that I was taking for NLP, his name is Matt James, who facilitates that. He happened to be from the island of Hawaii, wrote a book about Ho'oponopono, and was teaching when I took my NLP classes. And they actually, before they even start anything, they do a Ho'oponopono prayer. Hawaiian music. And what you do, and this is how I learned this, is from NLP, which isn't really related, but you call either yourself or whoever you want to forgive up on stage, and you're visualizing it. Visualizing is extremely powerful. And then you go through those 4 phrases. Just take your time and just, you'll feel it. You'll
Could you
feel
go through the
everything.
phrase now?
Pardon me?
Could you go through the phrase now?
Yes, absolutely. It's, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And thank you. And if you've ever been to Hawaii or known any Hawaiian families, I have, and they're so different from like us Americans. They're peaceful. They're calm. It's a very, I don't want to say lackadaisical. It's just a very chill lifestyle they lead on the island. And that's why, because if they have any dissension in the family, they call the family together and they talk it out right then and there. They say the mantra and it's good. So it's not like anything festers or seethes within them. It's all taken care of. As soon as someone complains, man, the whole family comes together and they're talking it out and they're using that. And I've got to tell you, that was what helped me tremendously, is learning about forgiveness.
And isn't it, what a different world we would live in if people could just let things go and let it be. And, if you need to discuss something, absolutely. But I grew up when I was married into my in-laws, that whole side, when they did something that I had never seen before in my life. They held grudges with each other. Ooh. So they would get in a fight and a month or two could go by and they would be holding that grudge. And I was just blown away when I came into that family of saying, wow, this is crazy. Why would you, you do mistakes, something's wrong, and what's the big deal? Just let it go. And it was like, or talk it out, if there's something. And so, I never understood that because I didn't grow up that way. But what a different world it would be if people could just, learn to express what it is. And then the problem is we hold so much in. So when you finally explode, you're never usually exploding for the reason that you're actually upset about, right? Because you've put so many layers on through time.
And I've had situations before I learned this, is that I didn't even remember the original thing I was mad at.
Right.
But it was in there. I just hadn't identified it. And man, I would for the silliest things, you look back and all of a sudden you're just furious. You're like, well, that doesn't make sense, but you don't say anything. So yes, it would make so much more sense. And I know that a lot of people don't understand it. Because everyone, and it's women that what I've found more than men that want to hold the grudge if they've been divorced. They don't feel their ex-husband deserves forgiveness. And it's hard to understand. And it's more of a mystical experience to forgive, because a lot of times you look at it and you know what they did, you know how it hurt. Why should I forgive them? But when you come to the realization that it's really not for them, it's really for you, you have to look at it and say, if that person did that to me, treated me that way, or said that to me, they don't care too much about me. Why am I still willing to carry their burden in my body?
In my heart.
In my heart.
You see, and that's what I don't understand is, and I've seen it and I've heard it a lot of times. I've had it through coaching clients where they have anger and it's like, you've got to forgive. And it's like, no, they don't deserve forgiveness. And it's not about them deserving. It's about you deserving that forgiveness. So they don't even know the person. You don't not necessarily have to forgive. You don't necessarily have to do that you don't need to go to that other person that you're upset with, but you can resolve it in your own way to let it go. And how did you find your best way of resolving to let that go?
For me, I was just tired of carrying the darkness, the heaviness. When your hair's falling out, when you're scratching your skin till you bleed, there's an issue. And I was mentally exhausted. And just one day it was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I realized that, for my ex to do that to me, he didn't care that much. Cheating is a choice, and you're thinking more of yourself than you are the other person.
Obviously. Yeah.
Yes. So why should I carry something he thought was okay or he did? Because if you're expecting an apology or you're expecting them to grovel for forgiveness, but they've done that and they really don't, they can say the words, but they don't care. Why would you continue to carry something that they hurt you with if they don't care?
Great point.
So you're carrying this thing in you, breaking your heart, hurting you, and they don't remember, or they don't care, or they're not bothered by it. And you're the one that's suffering. You're the one that, and it's just to a point where that's self-hate by doing that. You want to practice self-love by releasing it. If you carry something in you that's hurting you that badly, that's antagonistic towards your body. And when you look at it that way, and you're expecting an apology for someone who might not even remember and definitely doesn't care, it's never going to happen. So you better figure out some way to release that pain inside of you, or you will get sick. You're when you've got those feelings and the darkness, your body is at dis-ease, and that's what disease is. Something's going on inside of you that's causing your body to be off. So you better go in and find it and release it, or you will get sick.
Okay, but you just said an important word, and I want people who are going through some of these things, because it's not that anybody can just go in and release it. So what do you do what is it like you had your own way? And I know this is part of your coaching style of what you do is you help people to go in and release. But for somebody else, is there a way that they can release some of this anger within themselves?
Like by themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. And the best thing you can do is either meditation or just the stilling of your mind. Just if you can be still and you can think, all you have to do is ask your body to tell you. Your body is brilliant. Your body holds everything inside of it. If you start like with a body scan with your feet and just kind of address how everything feels, you can feel the difference with each body part. And then maybe you get to your heart and all of a sudden it feels very tight or squeezed. If it's something to do with forgiveness, I can just about guarantee you it's in your heart. And all you have to do is with breathing or with that Ho'oponopono mantra. Just a minute. My grand dog is here.
That's okay.
Okay. And what you're doing is you are releasing that to free yourself from that. You can think about it and use tears. I wish to release with tears. You can release with anger. If you feel like hitting a pillow or something, the way I do it is with breath. I ask it to come up through and I just blow it out with sound. Because sound, it can be guttural. It can get really, really low inside your belly and you're pulling it up from the depths. And it almost sounds like a wounded animal sometimes. Yeah. And that's when you know you're doing really well. So you can do it yourself, and not always the easiest, but it is very effective. Once we learn these little tips, tricks, and techniques, you can work within yourself. You can clear yourself. You can meditate and ask for guides to come in and clear you. It just depends on how you want to do it, but you definitely can do it yourself.
I also had a little bit of a thing what I would do. I also did exactly what you're suggesting, how I got through my time as well. But I also had another way of understanding it mentally for me is I always would go back to the person that hurt me. And I would say, they only did the best of what they could, because obviously they weren't, maybe they were never brought up with learning of proper etiquettes or being kind and things. And when I came to a part where I would do that with saying, they only did the best they could with what they knew. So obviously they didn't know. Instead of harboring that anger in me, I could release it by knowing that, even though that most of us know better, like you're saying, of of whether if you're in a divorce and it's because somebody's been cheating, we all know better of what it's the way a relationship should be or shouldn't be. We all know that. But let's be real, that if a parent maybe did that to their child, it's like drinking, it goes on and on until somebody takes a hold and makes that change in themselves. So they could have had a parent that cheated, and then they started seeing that type of behavior and followed it through. And
Yeah, absolutely. And it's brilliant that you're talking about this, because when I started forgiving myself, that's what I used, is that I thought about it and I thought, well, I didn't do that right. I could have done that better. I could have done that different. But then I thought I did the best I could at the time with the information I had. And so then as I understood that for myself, I started looking at other people differently, thinking, well, maybe they did their best with the information they had. Now, I can't really excuse the cheating, because we know you're not supposed to do that. But, for other people that like maybe said something that hurt my feelings or irritated me, I'm like, well, maybe that isn't offensive to them. Maybe they don't understand. They think they're being funny and they're really being obnoxious. So I stopped judging, really. I stopped judging them, because I thought, well, if I always tried my best, maybe they do too. And when I stopped judging them, I stopped judging myself. When I stopped judging myself, I thought, well, you know what? I love my kids and I love my friends. I love my dog. Why don't I love myself? And I don't think a lot of us understand. And you tell me, Glenda, because you coach a lot too. Do you find that people don't really understand the concept of self-love?
Yeah. Well, I understand that, because that was me for years on end. I didn't love myself. I'd look in the mirror and I saw this big girl, because everybody always referred to me as big. And I never thought the fact that I was 5'8". So, of course, I tower over most people, but I always saw big as being big. And, it was funny, about a week or two ago, I was going through pictures because I was going to line something up for a course that I'm developing. And I was back at old pictures, and I started looking at myself and saying, wow, I'm not as, I wasn't big. And yet all those years, I thought I was huge. So it's really, yeah. Did I love myself? No. Did I look after myself? At a certain point, I did of my life, but for most times, I kept putting myself at the bottom of the pile. And then, it was many years ago, and not, it was more closer to this part of life than that part. I decided that it was time to put me on the list, because I wasn't doing anything for me. And that's when I really started working out and, really started changing my mindset about that I deserved it first. It wasn't always about everybody else, and that I had the right to say no. And if they didn't like it, that wasn't my problem. I
Yeah.
had to do what was good for me first.
And was there a catalyst for that? Or did you have an epiphany? Or how did all of a sudden you realize, gosh, I'm worth it?
Well, I think it was the first time going through the divorce of hitting, some really dark times. Of first of all, it was having two kids. Well, before my divorce, I was a mom 24/7. My spouse didn't do anything, and it was always about me. And, whether it was being up all night with one of the kids, and then when that kid would drop and have a sleep or a nap, then came the second kid, and it never was about me. And you get to the point where you're falling all over yourself and you can't keep on going. And for me, things started happening in my life. I got sick. I got Bell's palsy.
Oh,
My face was paralyzed.
yeah.
I blew my back out. There was a point in my life where I was totally paralyzed. It was all these things that kept on hitting me, not one after another, but one get back on my feet time thing, and then something else would come along. And that's when those times when you can't get out of bed and you can't stand on your own 2 feet, you start going, wow, you know what, like, I've got to do what's for me. And so here's the biggest part of everybody, like if you are a mom and you're just beginning, and I know how important those kids are. Listen, you and I both have older children. I think mine are an extra 10 years above yours, but it's every, mom wants to do and love their kids. But if your cup is sort of halfway full or closer to empty, you can't do anymore.
Right, right. That's so true. And I'm doing a forgiveness course, and one of the things that it dawned on me and I put in there is that because I wasn't practicing forgiveness, I was going through the motions. I was just I just it was like muscle memory that I did what I do okay, this is Tuesday, I got to do this and this. But I was not, the old me would have been enthusiastic, but the person that was hurt was just going through the motions, going to bed, getting up, motions. Were you ever like that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was running a business. I've always been in business, except for the first 8 years of my kid's life. I was a stay-at-home mom, but but even in those years, I was doing everything. So it was like I was on a treadmill and I just never stopped. And, even at points when my spouse was not well and my dad wasn't well all at the same time, I was up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning doing laundry and sort of falling into bed. And then the next morning, just getting up and just sort of getting the coffee down me so I could get some energy to start the day. And it was a horrible time because I wasn't running on any energy. I was running on zero.
Oh, and I think your kids are pretty close in age, if I'm not mistaken. And it's hard. Stay at home. People don't realize, I mean, some people do if you stay at home, but I stayed at home after my second one was born. Whew. And I had 8 years between my kids.
Yeah.
So I kind of started over, but I didn't have two little ones at home at the same time like you did.
Yeah. So it was difficult in some ways. But here's the thing that we have to remember to ourselves, and this is for moms and dads that are watching. When we do something with ourselves, whether we don't take care of ourselves, where we allow ourselves to maybe gain too much weight, or we don't put ourselves together and we look like, excuse me, but look like shit maybe. And your children are watching you. As you're doing or not doing, they're watching all that. And that's what they're learning. It was one time when I realized when I was in my marriage, how I was accepting to live in a house where there wasn't enjoyment. There was a lot of resentment. There was a lot of anger. And it took me a while till I realized that one day, I don't remember what it was, and I thought to myself, I didn't want my kids coming from a broken home, so I should stay married. And then sometime something happened and I went, this is a broken home. That's what they're learning. I'm teaching them of what love isn't. I'm teaching them what it is. That's why we should stay together in this family that's now, angry and there's yelling and I'm thinking to myself, this is not how I grew up. This is not what life is supposed to be about. And that's when all of a sudden it was like, it's no, you know what? It's time to change. It's time, no matter how scared I am, because I was fearful because I hadn't been working. What am I doing? I'm leaving my relationship and I'm not working. I have no money coming in at this point in time. And my spouse at that time, we agreed that we would split up and it would be, a good breakup, because of the kids, we would do it all. And that lasted at about a split second. And, it was a really terrible time. And the saddest part is what my kids had to go through. And that's what breaks my heart. But it taught me a lot of things. So just be aware of what we do to what we think we're doing for the good of our children. It starts with you first. So when you're happy, you'll see that your kids will be happy.
And, Glenda, that's such a good point that you bring up, because I remember after the divorce and after I moved out and both my girls moved, one lived with me, she was in high school, but the older one moved back in. And our relationship and our dynamics changed completely because I was free to laugh. I was free to talk. And, they're like, gosh, Mom, we didn't know you were so funny. Gosh, Mom, we didn't realize you were fun. Gosh, Mom, they had no, and I thought, so what, who did they see all those years? Who was I? And, of course, like you, I was miserable, and I realized it, but I kind of the same mentality. I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? And, we can never go back,
No.
but we can certainly help people understand that by doing what we did, we finally did get up, move on, and live our best lives. But your children are watching everything, Linda, just like you said, everything. And they're absorbing it too. They're absorbing the pain, or when we would fight, they'd hear that. When we bicker, they catch all of it. They catch the moods, they catch the rudeness, they catch the arrogance, they catch everything.
Well, let's be real. When we're angry, and it's not just of our kids, if we're negative people, we attract negativity into our lives, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Whatever your mind thinks about, it's coming in. It's going to manifest on the outside. It's a universal law.
So we have to learn that, what do you want? Start asking yourself some questions. And we sort of are going back and forth in this time, and we'll talk about another time. We'll get into the real reinvention, because you and I are working this so that we can help people grow and get through the hard times and forgive themselves and start to create a new person of themselves. But you got to start with making a decision first in yourself and in your life, because we talked about earlier of we tend to think of ourselves as, I'm a mom. Well, you know what? Yeah, I am a mom, but that's only a part of who Glenda is. We got to look at, really dig in deep of who you are and make a decision that you want to really start to understand yourself. Because whether you're wanting to be forgiven or you want to move and build yourself a new life, it all starts with making decisions first. You got to get to the point that maybe you're sick and tired of feeling always sick and tired, of feeling always angry, or always getting into, are you the person who's always getting into fights with your friends? And I'm not physical fights, but I mean verbal fights, or your relationships aren't what they should be. You got to start with making the decision to start learning, to start digging deep into yourself and start exploring you.
And it's easier to do than people think. People don't know where to start or don't know how to start. And who knows you better than you, really? If you take the time, you sit with yourself, silence is your best friend, and just let the answers come to you, because they do. They absolutely do. Whether it's, through meditation and how you feel, whether it's a message download. I mean, if you listen, you will hear everything you need.
But one important part is too, Nicole, is as you're very well aware, and some of your stuff comes just it's like walking and talking to you because this is who you are. But really putting out some questions to the universe, to out there of asking sometimes for direction really does help to get some feedback, does it not?
Absolutely. And when you put something into words and ask the universe, that's taking action. And if you call your guides in, your angels, whoever you want to call it, they only come in when you ask. So by asking them to come down and guide me and asking the questions, that's when you're going to get the answers. So yes, absolutely. Whatever, and it doesn't matter what you ask, nothing is foolish.
The other thing that I highly suggest of people is get yourself a book. And some people love to journal and some people just can't be bothered with it. But get yourself a book or a binder, and maybe you call it your you binder or your you journal, whatever you're going to do. And, especially when we talk about reinventing ourselves or creating a better version of ourselves, because, maybe it's time to you've gone through a divorce and it's time that you just get your mojo back, or and especially if you are gone through a divorce and you want to start dating again, you got to do the work first, or you're going to attract the same one that you just left behind. And you don't want to go through that again, trust me. I can talk about that one, but the whole idea is to start and take a page or 2 pages and start writing down on in one page all the things that you love to do, you love about yourself, and whether it's your physical being, whether it's your personality, things that you love to do, anything that makes you happy. And you just keep writing out all the things. Now, this is something that I suggest that you do over, over a time period, because it's not just a one-time sitting thing that works. And then on another page, you start writing out all the things that you don't like, what you don't like about yourself, what you don't like about your personality, what you don't like about doing, whatever the things that you hate. And you write them all out. Because here's the thing that helps you in direction. When we talk about starting over, remember, when you're in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, you're not starting over from scratch. We start over from what we've gone through. And somewhere along, when you start writing that out, this becomes a key. And when you can sometimes find 2 things that maybe you love or you hate, there could be other things in there that are little keys to helping you to developing a better life for yourself. So I highly recommend that if anybody is looking in that's one of the exercises I work through when we're going through our reinvention, of going into that. So it's really important that everybody time into these things so you start to really understand and start looking at, who am I? What makes me happy? What do I want? You start asking these questions, and those are the questions you allow yourself to sit with a little bit.
And nothing is silly. Some of the things that I reflected on that I like to do were something as simple as just a walk. Nothing big. It didn't have to be big. It can be the smallest of things. Picking up a book when it's quiet that you can read, you can be by yourself. And then you'll remember more and more and more things of who maybe you used to be that you miss.
And just like you said, nothing is silly, nothing is right, and nothing is wrong. It's just the way it is. So picking on these things is a great starting point to healing yourself, to moving forward with yourself. And the most important thing is to feeling good within yourself, because sometimes things happen that trigger us that, hold us back as well. And it's not until you start getting stuff out of your head onto paper that you really start to see where you are, who you are. And then from that point, you can start to really key in and find out, what do I want? And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's true. And and it's okay to change too from who you were, maybe when you got married, or when we morph every single day. We wake up, as a new person, just with that first breath. So it's okay to not be that person you were 10 or 20 years ago. Become what makes you happy now. Look at your happiness as, instead of, you can't change the past, you don't know about the future, just stay in the moment and think, what would I like? What would make me happy? Who am I? What makes me feel good? And it could be very different from what it was when you started originally.
Just being aware when we're going to be coming down to the time. One little key point that I'm going to make, and I'm going to ask you to think about, is how do you show up in your life? And it's a very interesting question. And that's what I want to leave you with on my side. Nicole, would you like to give any little golden nuggets before we leave for today's show?
I would. And who you think you are or were may not be a true reflection of who you are. Because once you either write, or you dig inside of you, or you just sit there and reflect on who, what, or why, you might have different answers that are coming to you. I used to live in ego a lot, and I don't do that anymore. I've taken that, put it aside. And I remember thinking the other day, I want to leave people feeling better about themselves than they did before I talked to them or they met me. I would have never thought of something like that. But I thought, people need to feel good about themselves, or just about the moment. So who you were then doesn't matter. Who are you now? Who are you now? Love her, find her, love her, keep her. Or him.
Or let's put it this way. If you're not happy with how you show up and who you are, you can show up and become something better. And that's the whole thing. What do you want to be? What do you actually want in your life? Anything that you really want is absolutely possible to be, do, or have. You just got to start with one thing, making that decision first. It's all it takes. Decision, and then taking action. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching today's show. And I hope that we've given you something to think about. And Nicole, what do you think that of today's show, that we could let them have one little last piece?
You know what? One thing that I always think about is that I couldn't sit here and talk about it with no knowledge. And because I've had these experiences, and nothing's ever going to be the same, but there was a time when I was broken, when I didn't know what to do, and I knew I needed a restart. So when you and I talk, Glenda, it's because we've been there, we've felt it, we've gone through dark nights of the soul, we have looked within ourselves, we have pulled things out of us, we have become who we are because we knew a change was needed. And that's where the magic starts.
I love it. Thank you. It's very true. So if you're looking for more and you just want some direction, have no fears. You can reach out to Nicole or myself and starting to build that better 2.1 version of you. Thank you for watching today.